Okay, Saints, this video is obviously kind of late. It's 3 something in the morning, and it's fell in my spirit, okay, by the Lord. There's this channel called Secular Talk, and this guy is a moron. He had put up this video about how Christians are trying to block a mosque from being built in Wisconsin. Okay, now I support the First Amendment right for you to practice freely your own religion. Alright? I do. I don't believe a mosque should be built. They're havens of Satan. They're no more, they're worse, less than a landfill. Okay? But this guy is going on and on and on about how the Christians shouldn't be protesting it and everything. He doesn't know what he's saying, because if he knew about Islam and the vile cult it is, and how they allow rape of women, they treat women less than dogs, they allow wife beating, their prophet Muhammad was a pedophile, murderer, and a cross-dresser who wore his child bride's clothes to get revelation, who was suicidal, said he got his revelations from Satan, and wanted to jump off a cliff. And he could not even read. And he did weird ritual things like rubbing his genitals on a cobblestone, worshiping more than one god, because Islam has multiple gods. If you read the Quran and the Hadith, you will find this information out. And they believe that humans were made from sperm, a blood clot. And then they have other stuff in there saying humans were made from dust, like the book of Genesis. The book of Genesis says that God made humanity in 6 days. God made humanity from dust, which is true. That's God, Jesus Christ, the true living God. But the Quran says its false God made humanity from dust, and another part says from sperm, another part says from a blood clot, and another part in the Quran supports the Big Bang Theory, which the Big Bang Theory supposedly made all life and human beings and all that. So if the Quran supports 4 different things, there's contradictions right there. The Quran, if it supports the Big Bang Theory, it's discrediting Allah, the false God, as the creator of all things. Alright, they also have in their scriptures, satanic Quranic scriptures, about the virgin birth of Mary. In other words, Mary was a virgin when she gave birth to Jesus Christ. Muslims deny it's in there, but it's there. The Quran calls Jesus Christ the Messiah. The Quran says to use the Torah and the Gospels to judge if it's true. And the Torah and the Gospel is part of the Bible. The Bible totally denies the Quran, because the Quran denies Jesus Christ as being God. The Gospel of Jesus Christ, which is centered on the Lord being crucified, dying on the cross, and being resurrected. We know Jesus Christ is not dead. We know that Jesus Christ was God and manifested in the flesh as Jesus Christ. Jesus Christ is God manifested in the flesh as a man the first time he came to earth. And he died, he came to save man from their sins. They deny that. Their ideology is that Allah can't, this is how they think, that their false God, this is how they demean their false God, that he is not capable of coming as a man because he didn't have a wife. That sounds so stupid, because God doesn't need a woman to procreate. He can make any man out of thin air. In fact, in the Bible, Jesus Christ manifested as a corporeal being, as a man on earth. Even before he was crucified, he manifested as a man. He manifested in the physical form to Abraham, to many of the righteous prophets of old. So I ask the Muslims this question: if you don't believe Jesus, God can manifest as a man and be born of a virgin, then why do you believe that God, how did God come about making Adam and Eve? Why do you believe God made Adam and Eve? You believe he made all things. So isn't it possible that God can do anything, even be born of a virgin without the virgin even being with a man? That's how they demean him. And then the Quran calls Allah the greatest deceiver. The Bible calls him the father of lies, meaning Satan. The Bible warned about a false prophet, false Christ, meaning sickos like Muhammad, and devil's doctrine, false doctrines. They're not going to adhere to sound doctrine, meaning false doctrines like the Quran. So I don't want to deviate off the topic. I'm just giving you some of the knowledge I gained from reading the Feces Quran and reading the Hadith. The Quran also says, kill the Jews and Christians. Do not show mercy to anyone that is not a Muslim. Only be merciful to the Muslims. What kind of a God teaches that? A sick God. That's a sick, false God. They also say to crucify the believer, non-believer, excuse me. To crucify them. That's exactly what ISIS does. ISIS practices exactly what is in the Quran. They are more Muslim than any Muslim out here, because you have Muslims that'll run their mouth, right, and try to defend their false faith, but they don't see what's in the Quran, or they read bits and pieces. They don't read the whole entire verse. Islam is not a peaceful religion, ladies and gentlemen. For a religion to say kill the Jews and Christians, don't show mercy to the non-believers, it also encourages that a Muslim can rape another man's wife, being that woman is not Muslim. It also says that a Muslim can take up to 4 wives. A Muslim can find a girl if he wants to have sex with her, so he's not breaking the law in Allah's eyes. He can marry her for a day or a week or whatever, have sex with her, divorce her, and then move on to the next woman. So basically trying to use a sacred covenant of marriage as a cover-up for their sin, so they can keep sinning. This is what their religion teaches. As long as they marry a girl before they have sex with her, as long as they marry her, they can have sex with her and they can divorce her whenever they want and move on to the next girl. That doesn't cover up the sin. First of all, it's an ungodly marriage. Secondly, it's a way for Muslims to continue to live in the flesh, meaning lust. This is Muhammad's teachings. Muhammad would change the Quran to suit his lustful flesh desires, so he can keep living in sin. I can get into this all night long, but I'm going back to the secular talk. If he knew what this taught, this religion, the Sharia law that they have, he wouldn't be talking all that mess, saying, getting mad at the Christians for protesting mosques being built. Okay, so if he wants to go there and talk about rights, okay, I understand. You're saying that Muslims have a right to build their mosque, then the Christians have a right to protest it. That's part of their rights. So you want to go there? We can go there. Because the Constitution says a person has a right to freedom of speech. These Christians are exercising that right. A person has a right to protest peacefully and assemble peacefully together. These Christians are doing that. So they're not harming anybody. They are exercising their rights. If they don't want a mosque built in their community, they don't want it built in their community, because Muslims are like roaches, an infestation, and they're invading every part of town. Okay? And if you, Mr. Secular Talk, had any brains, you would realize that. You're centered around the right to religious freedom. Okay, they have that right. But then the Christians have a right to protest, and they have a right to freedom of speech, and they're expressing themselves. They have every right. You can't stop them from doing that. But let's say if the situation was switched around. Muslims were protesting churches being built. Nobody would say anything. They would support the Muslims. And they would totally shut the Christians down if they tried to fight it. But when a Christian protests for their rights, you have the nerve to sit there and attack them. So before you sit there and you swear off about mosques being built and you're supporting that, you better research what Islam is, because I guarantee you, when you find out what is in that Quran and Hadith, you're not going to be sitting up there saying, well, Muslims have a right to build a mosque. You don't know what they teach behind them. Every Muslim wants Sharia law. Muslims do not support democracy. They can sit there and tell you that all they want. They don't support democracy. So in other words, what you consider democracy, they won't support that. This guy is running his mouth without any kind of knowledge to back it up or any proof. He wants to talk about constitutional rights. Well, these Christians have a right to express their mind, freedom of speech, and to protest. They're not harming anybody. They're just saying they don't want mosque built, and I understand where they're coming from. They're not harming anyone. They're trying to block mosques from being built, and I understand and I get it. You have to understand, ladies and gentlemen, Islam is a cult. It is a violent cult, and it oppresses women very seriously. It denies Jesus Christ as God, and Jesus Christ is God, and it teaches you to worship Satan and a pedophile false prophet. These very same Muslims whose ideology teaches that it's okay to rape women and steal the spoils of war. These very same Muslims who their Muslim brothers are raping women all across Europe and here in North America. So before you sit there and you defend that cult, you better do the research. Otherwise, keep your mouth shut. Because you don't know what it's like to live in a community where you are the minority Christian and the majority Muslim. And it's a shame, yes, you have one or two Muslims that are not violent. It's a shame that they have to pay for the rest. But I don't trust anyone, because even that one or two violent Muslims, they want Sharia law too. And they can sit there and tell you, no, they don't, but they do. If they deny Sharia law, they deny the Quran, because the Quran commands Sharia law to be implemented. This is the time we're living in, ladies and gentlemen. These Christians are getting persecuted for expressing their rights. In other words, exercising their rights for freedom of speech and protesting as well. They're protesting peacefully. So if he wants to go there and say, oh, these Muslims have a right to religious freedom, well, then these Christians have a right to freedom of speech and to freely protest. If you want to go there and bring in the constitutional card, we could do that. You don't want a mosque built in your community. I'm telling you right now. They're like roaches. They produce very fast. The minute you have a mosque built in your community, that's like the hive mind of the roaches. The roaches start to scatter into your town and infiltrate your schools, your businesses, even your family. I'm not trying to insult anybody, ladies and gentlemen, but I'm being real. These Muslims, I don't hate anybody. I love everybody. But the Muslims that I'm specifically talking about, okay, are the ones that are devout extremists. Now, the Muslims that are kind of secular, like they're not devout practicing Muslims, they want Sharia law too. And those types of Muslims that are not really practicing Muslims, even though they label themselves as Muslims, those individuals, if they seen what was in their Quran, I guarantee you they would leave their cult and come to Christ. But they haven't seen what's in the Quran yet. I've watched literally at least 17 Muslims last week. They took the time and they read the Quran page by page. And when they got to that verse that says, judge if the Quran is true by the Torah and the Gospel, and then they went back to the Gospel, and the Gospel is centered, like I said, on the death, resurrection, and the crucifixion, death, and resurrection of Jesus Christ. We all know Jesus Christ is eternal. Jesus Christ is God. When they read that, that was enough for them to leave Islam. They saw the lie. So, ladies and gentlemen, the Lord said Satan's minions are going to be out and about. Now, this guy from Secular Talk, he knows nothing. Okay, he's probably the same kind of guy that's an atheist, that also supports gay marriage and all that. You know, a sick guy in the head. Okay, so if you want to choose to listen to this guy, you can. But the channel's called Secular Talk. Be careful with wolves like that. Okay, be careful. Be careful, ladies and gentlemen, who you listen to. Test the spirits.